Good afternoon everyone and welcome to the Magic Software webinar, Mobility and Integration in Logistics and Supply Chain Management. I'm Tom Hutchins, Marketing Manager for Magic Software UK, Ireland and Nordics. I'm joined today by my colleagues Charlie Gray, who's our Business Development Manager and expert in the Logistics and Supply Chain area, and Richard Rums, our Technical Consultant, who will be giving you a demo of just how easy it is to manage the mobility integration with Magic Software.
Hello everybody.
So, on the agenda today, we're going to start off by introducing the topic of mobility and logistics in integration. Then we're going to look at which systems you need, identify the touch points for integration, then have a closer look at how Magic can help you with our mobility and integration solutions, and hand over to Richard for a quick demo at the end. So, Charlie, would you like to introduce the first area of mobility and logistics?
Yeah, thanks Tom. Hello everybody and thank you very much for your time. I know we've got a fair mixture of different sizes of companies here, but really I think our objective as much as anything else is to get everybody thinking about opportunities that are presented by the change and if you like I'm sorry, I'm going to use a cliche now, the consumer-led environment that we all live in these days. But the thing about particularly mobility is becoming very, very important everywhere, and especially in logistics, because by definition, a lot of the people involved are not office-based. People, and I would say actually both employees and customers increasingly want to be able to make use of the mobile apps that, that their smartphones and their tablets, etc., are capable of running. They want to be able to make use of those to deal with suppliers, but they need those applications to deliver information from back office systems. Any kind of whizzy looking app at the front is of no value at all in the commercial world unless it's got access to that kind of information. And not only is it commonly used ones like accounts packages, ERP systems and customer relationship management, but also systems that are specific to the logistics sector itself. Although when we come to the demo, for the sake of simplicity, we're going to show, Richard's going to show us like an ERP type, which is a classic type of one. But users increasingly are accessing data across more devices and more architectures. So we can no longer expect that all of your data is going to be accessible in one system or from one single device like a laptop or a desktop PC. And what we're finding is that back office integration is pulling data from multiple sources and it's updating it as well back in those back office systems. So if you connect these integrated workflows into a single mobile application, then you can provide all the information that your users need wherever and whenever they need it, basically. So if I just, there's a list here of some of the types of things that are in use in industry in general and certainly in the logistics sector.
That's absolutely correct. And the thing as well, Charlie, is that today it's not only the traditional office systems, the mainframes, thin client terminals, desktops and laptops. People want to use an increasing number of smartphones, often their own one that they brought to work. Yeah. And not only more services being available through web browsers, but there's an increasing array of mobile apps and social media tools that are being used in the workplace now.
No, absolutely, yeah. And by the way, guys, I do apologise for my accent. If you think this one's bad, just wait till you hear Richard's. But I'm going to assume that everybody here is already familiar with the supply chain and the logistics sector generally. So I will actually skim some of these slides in the interest of time in covering, because there is actually quite a lot to cover. So what we're seeing though is a demand for mobile applications is actually driving a requirement for integration across the whole sector, and that's supply chain management, warehousing, logistics, transportation, etc., etc. So there will be mobile apps that will overlap one or more of these areas, and they will need integration across those systems, as well as I say, the more generic back office, the ERP systems that I mentioned, accounts and contact management, etc., in order for them to be effective. Okay, I just said that. So on the supply chain management side, if we look at that for a minute now, one example of this integration need is that there are so many different roles across the industry. So we're all responsible for our own areas, and sometimes, and this is particularly relevant, but I want to say this to the audience, you might be sitting here, it's kind of hard to think about areas that aren't in your own sphere of influence. So it's sometimes kind of hard to kind of put yourself in other people's shoes in other areas. So, you know, customer service, finance, sales, drivers, warehouse managers, etc. So if we take just one example, customer service has got an angry customer and he's on the phone and he wants to return something or have it replaced or whatever. But the status of each step in that series of transactions is going to be identified somewhere in one, but not necessarily all, of those systems. So in most cases, it probably won't be in the customer relationship management system or the contact management system that the customer service rep is actually looking at. So that person, to take this one example, they need the right information, and it probably needs to be gathered from several different places so that they can answer the customer's question, which is inevitably, where the hell is my stuff? As I say, I am kind of skimming these, but we're going kind of an inch deep. But if we look at warehouse management system now, and we're told that despite the recession, the number of companies that are investing in warehouse management software is actually increasing at about 8% per year. And the more recent of these systems tend to support smartphones and tablets, etc., etc. So it's one of the areas that, as a result of that, we're seeing quite big changes. So, for example, traditional paper reports are being replaced, and that brings with it not only more, I've said real-time alerts, but let's call it near real-time alerts, so certainly more current information and the opportunity to have, you know, alerts to exceptions and errors, etc. So, and a lot more flexible reporting, because it's not paper-based reporting, where you can maybe drill down further into a piece of data to find out what's actually causing it, so you can identify trends and issues before they become, you know, a major headache for people. So if you look then at the logistics, so some of the things that mobile applications, for example, can help with, things like, I won't read out the whole list here, but, you know, proof of delivery, for example, for shipping companies that are using GPS, maybe barcoding, signature capture on the rugged devices, etc., etc. And cameras and other interfaces combined with tracking applications, so that managers and third-party logistics providers can have transparency, as I say, in real time. There's that cliche again, which just adds to the overall process efficiency, if you like, including enhanced security for shipments. And then if we look briefly, transport management systems, and so I guess we mentioned a few of them just a second ago, but so those and other transport management functions, if you like, can be distilled into mobile applications so that they're easy to access and get current information on. So, as I say, that kind of visibility, though, I'm going to come back to it again, it needs integration into the systems that are running at the back end. So, with all of these things that are going on, so, you know, routing and scheduling and proof of deliveries, etc., an awful lot of information is being generated, and it's being viewed by people in different roles, which is why I mentioned roles earlier. So it makes sense that a lot of that information can actually be fed back into other systems. So, and again, we come back to, you know, customer relationship management, which I'm going to call CRM now because it's easier to pronounce, and ERP systems. So let's take a look then at some of the candidates, if you like, for integration within some of these parts of the supply chain, if we could. So in general, sort of logistics systems, they tend to focus on transportation, you know, warehouse management and order fulfillment. So they rely on CRM data for customer information, and customer relationship management systems need logistics data in order to give a complete view of the customer. So, and again, I know I mentioned this earlier, but a lot of you won't have all of these functions within your companies, but you will all have some of these. So regardless of that, the point is somewhere in the supply chain there is going to be somebody who needs to be able to see or to update some part of the information about any given transaction. Now, often that's going to be on a mobile device, or at the very least, it might be somebody who doesn't have the time or the patience to jump around from one system to another and wrestle their way through your auto call distribution system on the phone waiting to pick option 8 from 9 to speak to the one person that might be able to answer their question. And so I'd say to you, even if you don't do all of these things, it doesn't mean that this discussion isn't relevant for you. Look at order tracking now, some of the targets for integration there. And actually this is probably, and again with the advent of kind of people ordering things online, ordering too many things so that they can choose which of the pairs of shoes that they've just ordered they're going to keep and the other 6 they're going to send back. Sorry, I'm talking about my ex-wife now. But order tracking is probably one of the most in-demand processes that needs to have integration and, of course, mobilization. Since in so many cases, it's the customer, the end customer, that's using the order tracking application. So the value of being able to integrate and provide that kind of information is it can put the customer very much in the driving seat so that they can get the answer to the question we mentioned earlier, the where's my stuff conundrum. And why is it taking so long, and when's it going to get to me, etc., etc. So you might need, or you might have already, some systems in-house that make use of things like barcodes and signature scanners, etc., that will support some of that capability. So we see that there may be several systems that have got some of the required information. Those systems need to be integrated with each other in order to deliver the information to the user or to the customer in a way that's usable and in a way that's easy for them to access. So even if you're not making this a customer-capable facility, that information still needs to be available in your customer relationship management system so that the customer service reps are able to tell their callers, your stuff will be delivered on Wednesday afternoon between 2 o'clock and 4, or it's going to out of stock, but it will be replenished by whichever date. If we look at order fulfillment, I really will just kind of touch on this one fairly quickly, but it is a slightly different question in terms of integration candidates, if you like, for order fulfillment. As I say, we've got CRM and ERP, but there's other things here. So tracking the order once it's been shipped via either your own capability or a third-party logistics provider is one thing, but what about the fulfillment of the order itself? So, processing the order, getting it picked and it's packed and shipped, etc. So how does that business process work for the organizations or the people on the other end of this phone and looking at this? I hope you're still looking at this screen. It's one thing for a small order, but of course not all orders are small. And in some cases you're going to have back orders or maybe part orders or part shipments while you wait for more stock to be delivered. So maybe especially in those cases, you need to be able to provide status updates regularly to your customers. You guys on the end of the phone, you know your business, you know the sophistication level of some of these questions really in a lot of organizations. So in your case, your CRM system really benefits from having access to some of these processes and visibility into some of these processes. There are other dedicated systems that are creating this information, so your customer relationship management doesn't need to duplicate that effort, but quite often you do need to be able to view it. And of course there's going to be times when you need the information available, for example, to an account manager so that they can decide on priorities for one of their, your clients. So that might change the standard plan according to any given circumstances. And of course you really need those changes to be fed back into the individual systems that created them so that they reflect the truth. So for order fulfillment, we're seeing, in a sense, a similar set of integration targets to what we've seen previously, especially when it comes to, for example, back-end warehouse management and inventory systems, because these are really vital and they give us the visibility into the full cycle, if you like, of the order tracking and the order fulfillment side of things. Mobile commerce, or m-commerce, is another area that's, in the last few years, has been going through fairly explosive growth, and it pertains mainly to retail or customer spend. But there's a couple of things worth sort of picking out about it there. Again, I've listed some of the some pretty familiar names actually among the kind of e-commerce platforms. But it grew by about 40% apparently worldwide between 2012 and 2013. So mobile application platforms that reach across channels and mobile device platforms, they can help to maximize revenue and they can control and help to control costs and increase your responsiveness to your customers. So businesses that don't have a linkage between e-commerce m-commerce, if you like, mobile commerce, and CRM systems and ERP. They really are risking dealing with the customers in a very, very fragmented way, in a way that will frustrate the hell out of their customers. And given that we live in, as you mentioned earlier, Tom, a very public and easily accessed social environment, then it's very easy to give a dog a bad name. We see it all the time with things like Trustpilot and Twitter, etc., etc. So as I say, organisations that don't have an effective linkage or an integration across their e-commerce platforms and their m-commerce platforms and their ERP and their CRM, they're just taking a very, very big risk. A salesperson or a customer service person can get blindsided. If a customer places an order via one of these channels, e-commerce, m-commerce, but the salesperson therefore didn't actually enter the order. Now, if that information isn't integrated with the CRM system, then they're completely unaware of it. And that becomes a major problem if the customer then has an inquiry that makes them want to call that customer service rep. It's actually interesting for us to talk about customers, to talk to our customers about this, because it really does provide that, again, here's another cliche, 360-degree view of your customer, which of course is really what customer relationship management is aimed to achieve. So how can we manage then the orchestration of the various systems where the integration of the individual business processes is so vital? We do that through a process that we call enterprise integration. And moving on to the next section now, we're going to talk a little bit about why it's so important that your users and your customers can get access to information on any device at any time. And we'll show you how you can use enterprise application development and integration platforms to achieve this.
Yes, so what we're really trying to achieve is allowing users to complete tasks, and that's regardless of where they are, when they actually want to do it. So really focusing on the outcomes. But there's two big obstacles. And the first obstacle is actually being able to provide them with the access of data without having to log into multiple systems or switch between screens. Because on mobile, that's really difficult to do. On a desktop, traditionally, it's frustrating maybe, but perfectly workable to use a couple of different apps, a couple of different screens at once. On the mobile, you just want everything presented to you and just be able to action it. And the second obstacle is even once you've got that access to data and workflows in place, our users might be wanting to work a bit differently on different devices and when they're in different places. And this might sound fairly obvious, but it can be quite a challenge to overcome. Let me explain a bit further. What we're really trying to achieve is giving the same functionality across different channels, which are different types of devices. So a channel is a smartphone, a tablet, a desktop. And if our desired outcome is to allow our users to accomplish what they need wherever they are on any device, you don't use a laptop if you're stopped at the side of the road. You'd use a smartphone or a similar handheld device, and if you're in the office, you're more likely to sit down and use a PC because you've got your comfortable ergonomic desk and chair, and you might as well get the benefit of the big screen, physical keyboard, your mouse, rather than fiddling with a little screen when you don't need that. Each device comes with its own way of working. On the smartphone, you want just what's most important, whereas on the PC, you might well be happy to sit down and work through reports and spreadsheets and pivot tables. So also for logistics applications, they must work on any device in a way that makes sense. As we see here again, representations of how you might work on different devices. On the smartphone, it's very much touch-oriented and a small screen, so big buttons, very easy to press, because you're probably going to be walking around while using it. The tablet, you're less likely to be completely mobile, but still probably not at a comfortable desk. You might be in a cafe, on a train. So although you still want it to be touch-centric and very easy to use, you've got a bit more ability to drill down into some reporting. And on the PC, we're all familiar with the mouse and keyboard way of working. It's all about channels and processes rather than apps and devices and the user experience. The processes, workflows, we're not telling the user here's an app, or here's mobile access to your customer relationship management, ERP, warehouse management system. What we're doing is we're giving the user an automated way of accomplishing a task, making it work in a sensible way, and just keep the business logic in the background. So we want to make sure that for the different types of device, the different channels if you like, that each one has its application work in a way that makes sense for the user. And we want all of this to happen from a single development effort. Which is to say, we want your workflow to be your app, not your Android app and your iPhone app and your Google Glass app, if it does become the next big thing. You want one app that works everywhere, because that means that you only have one app to maintain and develop and update. That means your mobile experience is going to be much more predictable, much more reliable, and users are more likely to take advantage of it and have a good experience. And then you come to the tricky parts of business logic, because there's a lot. Okay, I think you may have lost me for a moment there, but I think I'm back. Yeah, user experience has to be intuitive. It doesn't matter if it's for your end users, for your customers, your traveling your employees. It must make sense to them, and it must work offline, because you don't always have connectivity and you can't depend on that. You need to be able to respond very quickly to market trends, because you can't run the risk that you're out of date in a few months, or one of your competitors gets that brand new feature that you're missing. You need to be able to ensure that both your data and your customers' data is secured across the applications, the devices, and the users. You need management tools to ensure that everyone who needs access has the access, and for auditability.
Actually, Tom, interesting you say auditability there. If I can tell you a very quick story, and I won't name any names, but one of the big things that comes out of all of this, and you've mentioned security as well, one of our clients, which is a kind of worldwide kind of cargo handling organisation, their Heathrow location, as a result of implementing the Magic integration platform and the kind of hopefully you didn't lose any of that story. Basically, customer of ours implemented Magic's integration platform and was able to reduce their insurance premium enormously as a result of the fact that they could more accurately track where everything was at any given time. So the incidence of frankly, employee theft was Right, sorry about that, everybody. Lost you for a few seconds, and we're annoyingly we're recording this, but we can probably do some editing.
Of course.
Try out the awkward silences. We lost the audio for a few seconds there, so apologies for that. Sorry, Tom. Go on.
Yep. So it's also, all of this becomes easier if you work with an expert partner who can see around the corners for you and make sure that the whole process is smooth and easy. We'd love to be able to cover these in more detail, but for you to get the most out of it, I'd really prefer to offer you a personal session with our experts to cover one or more or all of these areas, because there's a lot more detail than we can really go into in this session.
Tom, you did want to talk about context, so I see that that's the next slide up.
Yes, so I mentioned context earlier, and the importance of being able to display the same workflow in different ways in different devices. So this isn't just to say that you want it to look like an Android phone or an iPhone, depending on which one it is. That's certainly something you do want, but it's more as well that if you have a smartphone, you want the buttons and the whole presentation of your information to be different. We have a process, and we're building kind of a window onto that process. And by using an application development platform, you can actually tell it how you want the same workflow to be presented on the two different devices. So you really can cater for the user context of different channels from a single development effort. And so you're taking the business processes that you're building, you tell the platform how you want it, and it's all automatic. And that's also kept up to date with any new devices that are launched as well, any new channels that come along. So really, what we're saying about enterprise mobility is that we need to handle all these requirements in the background. So we need a platform to handle the heavy lifting. The modern application development platforms handle the coding for you. So all you have to do is specify the business logic and let the platform do the rest. So then with enterprise integration, we can really integrate a variety of different systems across different platforms and operating systems. That's why we're calling it heterogeneous or heterogeneous. We can't actually decide amongst ourselves how it's meant to be pronounced. But there you go. These systems serve different business units in your organization, many of which might be in remote offices. There's a need for real-time or near real-time, not just scheduled overnight batch updates. So this exchange of information in near real-time enables us to provide the best possible customer experience. And Charlie, I think you wanted to discuss about how some of our listeners' own customers might be dealing with this.
Yeah, good point. Actually, if I move on to the next slide, I think. The thing about enterprise integration, and we've talked about integration already, but as we've seen, it needs to connect e-commerce platforms with e-commerce, m-commerce, whatever you want to call them, with back-end systems. And it needs to fully automate the supply chain as far as possible to help us in our dealings with our trading partners as well. And I've spoken to several of you, I think maybe some of the people who are on the phone, in fact, certainly a lot of people in the supply chain and the logistics sector. And so I'm aware that often your larger customers dictate really how you exchange that kind of information with them. So the huge advantage of a smart integration platform is that when you acquire new customers who might have different information needs or be running a different system that they want you to talk to, then accommodating those new requirements can be done incredibly quickly and very, very efficiently. And obviously, be able to guarantee that best practices, if you like, that best practices capability makes you as an individual organisation applying for that business or touting for that business, it makes you stand out basically from your competitors. So overall, it needs to help us look across the whole business in order that we can see what can be improved so that we can achieve the best possible business processes, and what it's all about essentially is improving our bottom line. Let me talk a wee bit more about integration before we get on to Richard's demo, which will kind of hopefully make it all seem a little bit more concrete and a wee bit less abstract. But talk about, and again, a lot of the companies, and some of you are among the people I've spoken to recently who've maybe said, well, we've got I've got an integration between this one system and this other system, and really for now that kind of does is, and the bottom line is the world doesn't stay that way for very long. It doesn't really allow you, and we've talked about the number of different systems. Doing an individual, what we would call a point-to-point integration, is really it's a band-aid type of solution, and it will at some point be not enough. Okay, so but as I say, one of the ways that you can do integration, yes, you can write code, you can create manual point-to-point integration. There's a couple of reasons, in fact, several reasons why it tends to fail. The first one being that it's actually very fragile, because enterprise systems are very dynamic. They're changing all the time, and so we don't really want to create point-to-point integrations that are going to mean we're going to need to rewrite them every time something changes, pretty much anywhere in that environment. For example, a new revision of one of the systems, maybe an operating system update or something comes out. So we look to platform approaches, and a platform, it allows us to use adapters and other forms of integration tools like connectors that enable us really to automate the process and allow us to work in what we call a loosely coupled integration fashion, if you like. So, as you might expect, ladies and gentlemen on the call, Magic offers business-ready, out-of-the-box integration solutions that are very easily configurable and scalable, and they're compatible with all the standard databases and data management technologies. So, smart, largely code-free approach that really enhances business performance, and by doing so, it increases productivity, very, very much reduces your risk, and ensures a faster time to deliver the kind of key applications and the key bits of information that you want your customers and your employees to have access to. And a platform solution really, it gives us the flexibility that we need to adapt to changing business requirements. So maybe something as simple as a system update, but as I say, other changing business needs, and you don't have to get involved in a lot of extensive programming. So what we're going to show you, or Richard's going to show you in a few minutes in the demonstration, is how that higher level approach, it uses what we call metadata. So you still got control over the business logic, but it allows that business logic to be, if you like, decoupled. So there's a lot less change management involved, and it enables you really to work at a much faster pace. So Magic, with Magic XPI, the integration platform, provides you with, just as it says here, business-ready integration solutions that are configurable, so you can customize your approach. It's also scalable, and Richard may talk a little bit about more detail about this, through a back-end in-memory data grid, and it's compatible with all the most commonly used databases, ERP systems, CRM systems, etc. that are out there. And actually, we're very, very proud of the kind of code-free approach really to integration, because it does enhance business performance, and as I say, it increases productivity and reduces your risk, gets your results faster. So, from our point of view, an integration platform really is, the way. Yes, I would say that, of course, but it really is the way to go. Let me just summarise some of the capabilities, and a lot of these come down to this in-memory data grid. For this audience today, I'm not going to go into any detail. I'm not even asking Richard to go into detail about it. And as you mentioned, if there's something that's of specific interest, then I think we would take that in a separate session. But I did talk about scalability. You will hear us mention that quite a bit. You'll hear Richard talk about that too. We've invested an awful lot in making sure that your systems will have what we call elastic scalability, so they can cope when the demands on them are very high, and they can free up resources when the demands on them are low. It means you can have any number of processes that are working simultaneously without a performance lag, and that means therefore your systems can cope, as I say, with the peaks. And bear in mind, in the world of mobile, you can no longer predict when those peaks are going to. You know that they're not going to necessarily happen during office hours. Okay. As I say, we accomplish it through in-memory computing, which is basically the use of memory for processing and for storage, such that essentially the hard disk becomes effectively a backup device. So you can scale out for any demand, and it lets you make use of all the CPU power and the memory that's available, so you can process everything that much faster, really, and deal with the large amounts of data that are generated by the various processes, the integration processes, and the various processes, different parts of the supply chain. So, as I say, the Magic XPI integration platform, it provides a scalable architecture really for enterprise connectivity to mobile applications, and really it doesn't matter whether you're connecting 5 mobile clients or 500,000. I don't really hesitate to get involved in too much technical verbiage, if you like, but it employs what's called a space-based architecture. As I say, and it provides always-on reliability and sort of backup and guaranteed message delivery, etc., etc. Touches on big data stuff, if you want to use another buzzword.
Yes, so really from a end user perspective, what the use of the in-memory data grid actually means to them is that their applications are always available, they're always fast, and they can always be relied upon to deliver the messages. So you really do see benefits from it, even though you probably wouldn't ever notice that it's there. You notice it.
Well, that's a very good point, actually. Yeah, the good thing about it is you almost never know that they're there. Yeah. The result of all of that, though, is that you have what we call a many-to-many integration capability. So we've got adapters that let you work with the commonly used back-end systems. I've listed some of them here. You know, Oracle's JD Edwards, SAP, Microsoft Dynamics, that kind of thing, as well as the ability to deploy the resulting applications across any platform. That's the stuff you talked about, Tom, with the limitations that using a phone doesn't really lend itself to typing very much or anything like that, or certainly having several windows open at the same time the way you would do on a laptop. So, let's say, whether it's desktop, client server, web applications, but those mobile applications, again, as you said, Tom, they might be iPhone, they might be Android, they can be different flavors. There might be flavors that haven't become commonly used yet. Windows Phone might be something else that comes along. But they're all making use of the native look and feel of each of those environments, and importantly, with one development effort. And really that can't be overstated, because the one development effort, if you've got any mobile applications that are specific to iPhone or Android right now, you'll already know what I mean by the value of only having to maintain one development effort there. The last example I wanted to mention there is developing a hybrid or native applications using an end-to-end development platform, because it covers the client side and the server side and the integration requirement that's needed there. One development stream, and the whole process would be optimized for best quality, flexibility, and time to market, which I think you touched on earlier as well, Tom. So you've got the pre-built adapters in terms of the integration platform. This slide is really to show that it's one technology stack that delivers both, but you can use them independently of each other. Pre-built adapters for the main back office systems, as well as technology adapters and connectors for all of the underlying technologies that these systems typically use. So these might be different browser clients, maybe things like web services and EDI and XML and that kind of stuff. I like to think of this as a really quite an elegant and comprehensive layer for what we grandly like to call business process orchestration. And that's like data transformation and mapping is included in that, routing of messages, as well as the critical management and monitoring capabilities, so that you've got, as an IT department, for example, you've got full visibility into the processes that are actually integrated. And this is all built on, as I say, this incredibly powerful and stable in-memory data grid that we talked about earlier. Maybe important to mention as well, these are available for applications that you want to have in-house, i.e. on-premise, or in the cloud. They can be batch processes if you choose that approach, and that might make sense for some things, or the integrations can be triggered. Richard will probably cover some of this, but they can be triggered by a real-time event, maybe an update to another system that's involved in a different part of the supply chain, for example. And that would trigger another process being kicked off elsewhere. That's really what I wanted to say as far as the talking part. I would like to ask Richard Runs, who's one of our senior technical architects, to take us through. Now, we've talked about logistics systems, but just for the practical purposes, we're going to show some of the stuff that we've got licenses for in-house, because it would have been illegal for us to try to show you anything that we don't have a license for. Richard, can I ask you to take over?
Yes.
Go back to that.
So previously, Charlie mentioned that it's important to share account information or customer information between a CRM system and an ERP back office system. And what I'm going to show you is a live demo between Salesforce.com CRM system and Oracle JD Edwards Enterprise One ERP system. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create a new account, and then that's going to be shown in my Oracle JD Edwards system. So I'm just going to call this demo logistics, go in here and say demo streets, let's call it London, WC3 something. And I'm going to save this. Oops, I need country as well. I'm going to save this, and if I now go into, oh, I should start the server as well. If I now go into my Oracle system and go into the address book, and then I can look at this and search for this demo system. And as you can see, there is so far no such system. So if I go into my integration execution log just to check what's going on there, and I can now see that it actually is updating and creating this customer information in JDE, and we're just waiting for JDE in this case to respond, and now it has responded. So if I now go back to my Oracle JD Edwards system again, I click demo, then we have a demo logistics record here. Please note the address number says 56186, and if I go into my account, there is an ERP reference here, and if I now reload this record, then exactly the same number should show up in that ERP reference. So as you can see, so what we have seen so far is that I created an account in Salesforce. It was then created in the ERP system, and the new account number in the ERP system has been put into the CRM account record. And now I'm going to go into my JD Edwards environment, and I'm actually going to make a change. So let's say that they moved offices. They are no longer at Demo Street, they are at 15 London Road, and they are in W2 1XT. I'm going to save that, and if I now look at my execution log, I think that has already been updated in Salesforce. So if I go into Salesforce and reload this record, then you can see that we have now an update in the building address, and we have now moved the offices from Demo Road to 15 London Road, and so you have an exact truth of the reality in both systems. Now, what is the effort involved in creating such a bidirectional integration? So let me show you. So if we start off with showing how the Salesforce to JD Edwards integration has been integrated. So first of all, what you're looking at is the actual process, and the blue pane up here is the trigger area. Everything in the Magic XPI integration platform is either scheduled to run or it is triggered by an external event. An external event could be that a new account has been created or updated in Salesforce. In order to configure to capture such an event, all you need to do is to go in and select which object you want to trigger on and what operation. And in Salesforce, updated is the same as created and updated. I then just need to click create. And for each updated or created record, I can then go in and say I want to process each account. First thing I need to know if this is an add operation or update operation, and then I can go in and create this record or update in JD Edwards. Click configuration. What we'll see is basically running a master business function in JD Edwards. I click OK. You will see a data mapper. On the source, I have the account that was passed by the Salesforce trigger, and on the destination, the JDE component has already pre-configured it. So if we look at the source here, you see the representation of the Salesforce account record, and on the destination is the various parameters that the address book master business function in JD Edwards is taking. If I now want to map something from one record to another, I just need to select this and select the source node and drag that to the destination node. So this is all you need to do in order to map data from one source to destination. And obviously you can transform data and manipulate data in various ways during this data mapping process. And then we read the response. To read the response, it's the same thing. I have the response here from the JD Edwards call, and it will basically give us an address book number or an error, and we can store this data later on in order to use that as a flow logic. So basically, if the operation was okay and the operation was add, then we just go in and update the ERP reference in our Salesforce environment. And working with Salesforce is very much similar to working with any other system within Magic XPI. You select your object, you select the operation, click OK, the data mapper will show up, and at the destination I only need to specify that I want to set the ERP reference for this specific account. The other way around, from JDE to Salesforce, is far more simpler. JDE will send a message to a Java messaging service, a message queue, and first of all we need to determine if this record should be processed in Salesforce, and when we do, we just need to use the upsert operation in Salesforce, and then just upsert the records that we got from the message queue, the JMS message queue, and use that as the source, and again account record in Salesforce as the destination. Now furthermore, I can extend this. So let's say I want to add systems here. So let's say I want to add to a SharePoint list. All I need to do is to add these components to my existing workflow. Maybe I want to call, insert this record into an e-commerce system using web services. And therefore it becomes very easy to change your business process, add new systems as they are needed in your environment. Let's talk about the in-memory data grid. So,
sorry, Richard, I promised you wouldn't have to use any PowerPoint, and now you're having to.
And now we can edit this away. So underneath the bonnet of what I just showed you in the development environment is an in-memory data grid. And what that actually is a distributed computing architecture that runs entirely in memory, i.e. it runs in RAM. And there are some really great benefits that by using a distributed computing architecture in an integration project. First of all, it has built-in failover and recovery mechanisms. So even if you experience there's a catastrophic failure on one of the nodes on the distributed computing architecture, one of the other nodes will just automatically pick this up and continue the execution from where it was running. Secondly, since everything is running in RAM, it enables you to create some extremely low latency, high data availability solutions. Also, it has elastic scalability. And just to point this out, I'm going to show you another slide which shows a more classic client-server architecture. We have a web client, you have a web tier, you have a business logic tier, there might even be a messaging tier, and everything is stored on disk in a database somewhere. And it's nothing wrong with this architecture. It's a well-proven architecture, but there are some issues. First of all, and especially when it comes to scalability. So in order to scale a client-server architecture, you would need to tune this in such that all of these steps on the road towards the data tier is actually working well together. So it could be a bit tricky to do this. We go back to the picture of an in-memory data grid. Then first of all, the data is actually cached in RAM, and secondly, there is only one step to the actual resource pool where the data resides. And when you need to scale, you only have to add another node or more nodes to the underlying architecture, and you will have more computing power available to your disposal. So that was a very quick crash course in what an in-memory data grid is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Richard, Johnny. As that's the end of our presentation. Thank you everyone who's been following along, and if you've been enjoying the recorded YouTube version as well, thank you for staying with us. So,
thank you very much, everybody. What I would just like to say, just in closing, is by virtue of the fact that you've registered for this, we all have each other's contact information. If there's any of the things in here that you'd like to go into in more detail and maybe involve some of your colleagues, because I know some of the stuff we touched on was technical, and not all of you, I know for a fact, in roles that are technical. So by all means, give us a shout, and we can have a more focused conversation and go into a little bit more depth. By definition of speaking to so many different people in different roles, we've had to make it fairly generic. So do get in touch if you think it would be useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.